We go. Welcome to our
right.
Bucky meeting for June 11th and 12th. And we're going to be switching topics tonight, and we're going into design principles, design discipline, Utopia or Oblivion, R.B. Fuller. And we're starting a new topic, and things are going to be really good. I did send out a pretty good summary in the last email that had all of our previous things about cosmic integrity and the hierarchy of generalization of generalizations. And there's about 6 or 8 sessions in there, and they're all in a directory, and they're all cool, and they're worth going over. A bunch of great ideas from a bunch of people. So anyway, Julian, how are you feeling tonight, and what do you expect out of today's call?
Thank you, Steve. I'm feeling good today. I was today having a time with my family, and it was really amazing to see like happy faces, new faces, faces that I wasn't able to see for a long time. Knowing new stories like that was really exciting. I have right now, to be honest, my energy low, like my body is already turning low. Tomorrow I'm going to have I have to wake up really early, so maybe I won't be able to make it to the end. I will silently maybe fade away in the middle, but I expect that the time that I be able to be here, like to really start joining two dots, figuring out new questions, starting to see how can we use this new topic, like give it a context, do research while you talk to us, and I think that's what it's going to be really exciting to discover what is going to be. So with that, Joe, how do you feel today, and what do you expect from our call?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm actually excited to start a new chapter with Utopia and Oblivion. Happy everybody's here. It's good to see Kelly, Raffers, and Butler, John. I'm actually just I'm looking forward to getting into Utopia and Oblivion. That's one of my favorite parts of Bucky. That and Spaceship Earth. So Raffers, how do you feel, and what are you looking to take away from today?
I feel great, actually. Happy to be back, and I'm happy to see everyone. And what I expect today is to learn a little bit more about something. That's my expectation. So grateful for that. And so, John, how about you, Johnny? How do you feel, and what do you expect today?
I'm feeling great and grateful. I've had a good start to the day. I've been out walking in the park and connecting with nature. I've enjoyed the rain, and I've been to my favourite little Chinese bakery cafe and indulged myself. I've missed a couple of weeks with you, so I'm looking forward to a new topic and reconnecting with you all. So glad to be here. And Susan, how do you feel, and what do you hope to take out of today?
I feel amazingly grateful to be here. I was at the hospital trying to come back to you folks, and they hit me with one more patient to see, so I'm glad to make it. I certainly expect that I'm going to get my perspective stretched, and I'm really kind of hoping that we get to hear a little bit more from Kelly. By the time we finished last week's call, Kelly, and you went down to just the simple stuff, it's like, yes, I love that kind of input. I love that kind of insight. And it's one of the reasons I've been a big fan of you for a really long time. And I'm not sure who else has gone.
Kelly's left.
Kelly, how do you feel, and what would you like to get out of today?
I'm feeling a little bit better today, a little bit tired as always, but I'm a bit better. Yeah, this discipline, this Utopia or design discipline, sorry, we've been doing it for quite a while, and it led into the other things. So it's really not a new subject. It's one that we've been delving into. I think we're at about the seventh one. So it'll be interesting to see when we review it, what we come up with, having done the other. Yeah, that's how I feel, and that's what I get out of it. Is it's just you left,
It's just
Steve?
me left. Just me left.
Where's Manu?
Good question.
Oh,
He might,
geez.
yeah, he might be resting. This is early in the morning for him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Steve, how do you feel, and what do you expect to get out of it today?
Well, I'm all excited about a new section working on this design discipline, the idea of utopian or oblivion. And Kelly, I like the idea what you said, having studied the cosmography and studied the hierarchies, you know, what do I bring to that? I was expressing before the call, before we started, about how this whole concept of having a thinkable set and what is obviously presented. Now my computer is frozen, so I'm gonna be logging on with my phone as well in order to excited to move into a new realm here, and like you said, Kelly, apply some of that topology, you know, to what we're going to learn, and I'm very excited about that. So I'm gonna be. Did you have any other comments or anything on that?
Not me.
All right, really good. All right. So I'm going to log in with my phone, but we can get started on the reading. And John, it's just exciting to have you. So I invite you to read a couple paragraphs and stop when your mind is blown. So, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to. Hey, Joe, do you have the Oblivion book that I sent you guys?
I have it. I can share that if you need.
All right, if you want to share, Julian, because I'm not able to share because my computer's frozen.
Let me try here then.
My computer and log back in. Do you have it? Whoever has it first can share.
Is it showing?
We don't see it showing.
Yeah, it's showing now.
It's showing, yeah.
Okay, good. Then I'm going to be busy. John, you guys go for it.
All right,
Julian, you conduct the meeting. I'll be back.
I shall start reading. Design Discipline, Utopian Oblivion by R.B. Fuller. Curricula and the Design Initiative. Changes in curriculum intended to prepare the individual to take the design initiative in economic, scientific, and industrial technology matters. Taking the initiative means that the design scientist, like the medical scientist, will no longer operate on a basis of having to be retained by a client to carry out the client's prime design concepts. The curriculum will prepare the design science graduate to undertake fundamental invention, self-underwriting, development, and experimental proof of invention, as demonstrated, for instance, by the Wright brothers, wherein the design science professional will be equipped with all of the economic, legal, and technological knowledge necessary for reducing such inventions to going industrial practice. Okay.
Comments, questions? If not,
Yeah. So we won't need people to employ us to use our skills to do what's best for the world.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but it seems to me we're moving into the age of quantum entrepreneurialism. It seems to me that I used to have to go get a job. Now all I have to do is get a great idea and get a YouTube following. I don't need a tribe of people within the 50 miles around me where I can drive and go to work every day. I just need 100 people anywhere on the planet. And if those 100 people pay me $10 every time they come on, I just made $1,000 every time I have a meeting. And I think we're in that age, aren't we?
Hmm.
Pretty much.
Is that progress?
100%.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, Joe.
No, I'm just saying, is that the type of progress that Bucky envisioned? I wonder.
That's what I'm asking.
Well, just picking up on your comment, Steve, the first thing is that's ephemeralization. So if I, instead of seeing
Right.
10 people and giving them an hour of my time each, and see 10 of them at one time to provide general advice, and they get an hour, but it takes 1 hour of my time, not 10, and they pay a tenth of the cost that they would have paid otherwise. We've certainly done more with less. We've used technology to ephemeralize. Steve's still in the wilderness, is he?
I'm back. I'm on my phone now. So, good. Comments, questions? Okay. Keep rolling, John, if you like.
Yep, sure. To realize such breakthrough magnitude inventions, commercially, militarily, or even socially, involves the individual preparing himself for the competent taking of the initiative in a whole new industry and its progressive development, testing, prototyping, tooling, marketing, servicing, maintaining, operating, and phasing in progressive evolutionary components. I think that "ang" is wrong. Should be "and" perhaps, phasing in progressive evolutionary components within the totally new industrial system, together with designed phasing out of equipment and functions made obsolete by the new industry. This in return releases metals and other materials, time and energy resources for reinvestment in the newest phase of the evolutionary emerging system. Okay, so work from home is part of this. And there's an interesting debate going on at the moment between Elon Musk, who is telling his staff they have to be in the office, and who is it is saying they can work from home? Is it Atlassian? I think it might be Mike Cannon-Brookes of Atlassian, who has said to his staff they can continue to work from home forever. And I think there's a bit of an exchange going on between Elon Musk and Mike Cannon-Brookes at the moment about this whole approach to employment.
I agree with you. And I think part of the problem is that Elon sleeps at his work. He doesn't have a life, you know? I wonder if that has a bearing on it. I'm sure Susan wouldn't want to be sleeping at the hospital.
I do sleep at the hospital when I get enough time, but so my daughter's significant other is an IT support person for Tesla. Elon slept at his desk for a period of intense work. Good for him. If he wants to turn that into a badge of honor and use it as a reason to club the rest of his employees, go ahead. What the employees are seeing from the stream of emails are that we're headed into a recession where other people are not going to be able to afford overpriced cars. And Elon needs to trim his workforce. If he can get them to quit rather than fire them, he doesn't have to pay unemployment. So I don't know Elon personally, but because in the podcast, everything is circular. Apparently he has a new girlfriend. He's out in the Monte Carlo vacationing, and he is posting about how much time he's spending on his new Elden Croft video game, his computer game. So there's a couple sides to every story. So there was my jump in the middle.
Cool.
But nothing wrong with working hard. It doesn't so much matter, I think, where you do it. I will tell you, it's amazing to watch this new generation have flexibility that I never dreamed of.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter fulfilled her entire contract at Goldman Sachs, where she signed for 2 years that she would work unlimited hours, 6 days a week. And they pretty much found a way to kill the 7th day too. And she fulfilled it with honor. And then she found herself a fabulous job where she took all those skills and connections, and she can work for home, and she can be done with work when she gets her work done.
Wow.
And she's, here I am, I'm 31 years older than her, and I'm still, doing a job in a way that siphons my life force particles. I'm not unhappy with it, but she learned much more quickly and was able to take a decision and move. So I need to learn from my children.
Well, Susan, we needed a doctor recently out of ours. We had a video telehealth consultation. The doctor didn't need to travel. We didn't need to travel. The doctor then emailed the script to an after-hours pharmacy. So that was using technology much more efficiently to make the professional accessible out of ordinary hours and to access the medicine out of ordinary hours. We still need the pharmacy open after hours, but the doctor didn't need to move. So, and the consultation was probably 5 or 6 minutes. That was all that was required. So maybe we'll find a way to free you from the hospital yet.
Oh, well, with the surgery side of it, probably I'm a little more, I'll be one of the last.
Robotic, you operate the consoles remotely, use robotic surgery.
Right,
That's
but
what
I'll tell you, the hardest part of robotic surgery is getting the carbon dioxide in the abdomen, getting the robot docked.
It's getting the robot what?
Docked.
Oh, docked. And so you can't do that remotely in 5G?
No, I could drive the robot remotely, but there's physical portions of the case that still need to happen. So it's all moving in a great direction. Please don't get me wrong. It's moving in a great direction. And
I wish
people won't have it any other way.
I had hernia surgery 5 years ago, and I wish my doctor had not gotten up that morning and made the appointment. I think he did a terrible job. So anyway, I probably shouldn't say that, but
Well, I had robotic surgery last year and had a great job.
It was robotic?
Yeah.
How close was the doctor to the robot?
He was controlling the robot. He was in the room.
He was in the room.
That's how almost all of them are done, is in the same room.
Aha.
Marvelous. You know, something that keeps spinning in my head. How do you say that? Well, giving circles in my head. It's about this breakthrough magnitude inventions. So hearing you talk about robots in surgeries and having us to know and understand all of the different technologies that we have right now. Someone asked me a question in another time this week, like, do you remember the time when there was no internet? How it's difficult for kids who born this new era with internet already in place, like cell phones and computers already in place. And now, how difficult is for us, for example, when I was born, the internet was not like the thing that is now. But for instance, cars was already something that was already in place. So can I ask my parents or my grandparents, like, how was life before having that technology? So
much simpler. When I was born, we didn't have television.
Exactly, like this breakthrough, how can we, like, looking at those in retrospective, it's easy to see like, yeah, that was a breakthrough. But how can we know if robots are going to be a breakthrough, if VR is going to be a breakthrough, if big data is going to be a breakthrough? Like, what is the thing that is going to be the next breakthrough? Is not very obvious as it seems. So I think that what we do know is that it's going to happen sometime, right? that's the thing that we know.
Can I hazard a guess that one of the biggest challenges to come out of the last 30 or 40 years is dealing with and ensuring mental and emotional well-being? I think one of the consequences of all the changes, I mean, in Western Australia, we've had a huge increase in the number of children requiring attention for mental health issues. And COVID compounded that, because when they were isolated from their peers and at home, that removed an important part of their development. And we know that devices are addictive. They're designed that way. And so the amount of screen time many children spend, I think probably isn't conducive to mental well-being. Susan?
I would tend to agree with you, John. I think it's almost an amazing concept to think that somebody believes we can ensure the mental well-being or emotional well-being of anybody, and to have it happen. So that just seems like a bizarre thing to consider. I don't know that that's anybody's birthright or any basic human right. What I will tell you is that if anybody's going to be at fault for corrupting the possibility of that well-being to exist, I could get on a fiery soapbox right about now and go off about what governments have allowed in terms of denigrating our environment and our food supply. And I took off for a while, and we did a little bit on EMF radiation and what some of those consequences might be when we were in the group together. But I swear to goodness gracious, it makes me sad every day to go in and visit with patients. Something as simple as a statin medication, which a very, very large portion of the population are on. We know, as a matter of fact, that it stops your internal production of CoQ10, which is one of the products necessary for you to extract energy from your food. And yet, pharma is not required to mandate CoQ10 supplements. I spent some of the research. Now there's some better ways to handle that, but the people that are at risk are at the biggest pain point of harming our mental and emotional well-being are our elected officials collectively, or us as a tribe. I don't know how you'd ensure that.
You know, Susan, like hearing you share with us all that specific details about mental health is also making me think that something that we should know that is different now than from any other past era is the amount of information that we're consuming. And yeah, maybe that's going to be another big change. And as you were saying, like, it's going to be something not only in our heads, but also in our bodies. And then we will see like a different interrelationship, because if with cars and planes we were able to travel faster to other places, then what's going to happen with all of this overflow of information? Like, you know, right now here in Colombia, we are in about to finish, to go for the second round of elections. And I don't believe previous elections for so much information consumed daily about that. Like, people is getting that in large amounts of informations every day from every source, like radio, phone, TV, newspaper. Like, every time it's a lot of information, and that is something that I was not aware of happening, of having such an impact of immediacy. For example, like yesterday something happened and the information went very fast, like tons of videos shared with the whole country. Like it is it is astonishing to think that right now that kind of things are possible. Now what are the consequences of that? I think we
It assists misinformation. Once you have that, it enables people to manipulate and
Mhm.
facilitate the spread of misinformation.
And that is today on Facebook, I don't ever go to Facebook, and I spent 2 minutes, and a buddy of mine was saying, gee, he didn't know that 5 people died in the insurrection at Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And then there are 15 comments below saying 5 people didn't die. Only 1 person died a day later of a heart attack, and 3 other people committed suicide. I mean, there was no consensus at all as to actually what happened on January 6th. And everybody who doesn't agree with the senator is just saying giant conspiracy cover over. We're in a crazy time with misinformation. How do I know when any information I'm receiving is actually the truth? Wow.
3 questions, Steve. Who said it? How would he, she know? And what's in it for them?
Yep, exactly right. It comes back to follow the money. It comes back to follow money. I'm reading here in this book. I marvel. I think Bucky today would just have his mind blown. I mean, he would read this and then he would say, well, you guys, here he's sitting here in 2022. I went and saw Maverick, the new Top Gun movie.
Yes.
And the first Top Gun movie is 35 years ago. And I watched Top Gun 1 just to see what went on with the movie, and the special effects were okay. But I got to admit, in the last 35 years, I come to expect a little higher degree of special effects. The new Top Gun movie was just absolutely kick butt. But here was the marvelous thing. This guy in the movie says, look, we don't need pilots anymore. We've got Evolution 5 jet airplanes that run themselves, but they're not operational right now. We have one more thing we need to do. So we're taking our Top Gun pilots. We're going to go solve this problem. 35 years from now, my grandkids' kids are going to watch Top Gun 3, and it's going to be all robots. And they're going to say, what? There were people flying airplanes back in 2022? That boggles my mind. And I know I'm talking a lot, but one more thing. You know, Elon Musk building his rocket ships. If you read this last line, he says here, Bucky says, this in turn releases metals and other materials, time and energy resources for reinvestment in the newest phase of the evolutionary emerging system. I think he's talking about, remember he talks about type 1 evolution and type 2 evolution, right? We've talked about that before. But he is building these rockets, and they're using 3D printers now. And there's one phase of his rocket that used to require 100 different parts with different manufacturers, different vendors. They're now building those things with a 3D printer, and there are 3 moving parts, and they're built inside of each other. And they got rid of those 100 different parts and got rid of all that labor of putting those things together by using a 3D printer. Bucky would blow his brain. He would just be totally, I think we would surpass his greatest expectations. I don't know.
Not in one way, Steve, in that way, but not as a world, not sharing, not looking after each other. The number of countries around the world that are in crisis at the moment.
Yeah.
Whether it's Lebanon or Sudan or a dozen other countries.
Yeah.
Where they're on the brink of complete collapse.
Yeah, we'll take a look at Ukraine even.
Yep.
One of the
Go ahead, Joe.
One of the things that I mean in this paragraph that kind of struck me is it involves the individual preparing himself for competent taking of the initiative in a whole new industry. And one of the things that I actually think about is that how individuals actually are having to reinvent themselves multiple times over now because their jobs are actually, going away. So you used to have just one career. Now you have multiple careers over, a long period of time, like over a shorter period of time, and people are having to reinvent themselves all the time. And I think this is actually part of the process of some of it is part of the process of ephemeralization. Like we were doing more and more with less and less. But at the same time, then, people are still having to change in that process. And that causes a lot of disruption, because like a lot of people will actually be left behind because of that in many ways. And people that can't reinvent themselves.
Yeah, but that's why exactly why Bucky talks about a different sort of curriculum. Change what we teach, the way we teach.
Right.
And you look at the world today, education hasn't changed that much.
Wow.
The world is radically changed. The people are being taught, math, arithmetic, geometry, the same way it was taught when I was a kid. And that was yonks ago. And so, and people are against, and up to me, education hasn't changed, because what the powers of being needs, what they need is actually people they can manipulate. And to manipulate people, you need to make them stupid. And if that means, again, people have to retrain themselves, or people being left out, then they just don't care. As long as the corporations keep getting the money and the profits, and in the States, the NRA continues to convince people that they have the right to bear arms, or whatever the cost is. I mean, so be it.
So, Raffas, are you saying that you can't join the Republican Party if you have an IQ above a certain level?
Absolutely.
Or the Democrat Party.
Well, the Democrats is the same.
They're not much better, Susan.
They're not much better. Exactly.
No, they're not. And I will tell you, there is a mean edge to the woke that's out there.
But see, United States is a particularly unusual country, because Kelly, do you remember a book called Dumbing Us Down?
Yeah.
John Taylor Gatto, I think, was the author, and he was an American teacher, a highly awarded teacher. He talked about the whole system being designed to dumb us down in the United States, particularly. And I had a brother who lived and worked in the United States for about 15, 16 years, and he was an educator. And he'd been principal of a school in Australia and a university lecturer. And he worked for Microsoft. And I said to him once, what's the system like in the United States? He said, in the very best of private schools and universities, it's excellent. In the rest of the system, it's absolutely terrible. So,
yep.
And
if you keep people dumb, you can manipulate them more easily. Is that what you were saying, Raffas?
Yeah, but it's not just in the US, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
Johnny.
Here's a phenomenon. My grandson, who is probably 7 years old, is just absolutely brilliant, if I may say. I mean, what grandfather wouldn't say their grandchild is brilliant? But I mean, he is. Since I always give all my grandkids books on astrophysics, and I buy them books. I got them all the Bucky magnets, right? And I just do everything I can to let them think kernelly about the universe. But he is like 7 years old, and he started asking Siri about how big numbers are. And so, and here's what's interesting. Google hijacked the system, told him the biggest number was a Googleplex. And he told him how many zeros there were in a Googleplex.
Wow.
And he just bought into it, right? But then he prepared a little paper where he put a bunch of zeros on a paper, ran out and started cutting paper together to put a giant map together of all the zeros that were involved in a Googleplex. So there's my 7-year-old creating his own education, because he's just able to ask a question and get an answer, which I could never do when I was a kid. Hell, if I had Google today, it would be very difficult for me to go to school because I'd be having so much fun.
There's a term for that I took from Steve Wozniak. He was able to be in Bogota for a couple of weeks ago, and he says about immediacy, like how computers allow us to get answers in the moment, and like every time we were getting better and getting better into getting those answers. And now that the thing is that now that we have the computers, like I was thinking, yeah, we now have like immediacy solved, and it is not true. Like still there's a lot of things that we need to wait for happen, or to get an answer. And sometimes our psychology, it's making us a trick, and making us think that everything can be done immediately, and then you skip the process, and then you start to get into trouble if you don't let the process do it things. So immediacy, is the thing that is struck to my mind when I see that kind of situation.
Yeah, and that was so important to understand lag.
Right.
Exactly. That's true. So whenever you're ready, we can continue to the next paragraph. All right.
The design scientist would not be concerned exclusively with the seat of a tractor, but with the whole concept of production and distribution of food, which might possibly lead to developing a whole new industry of hydroponic factories for automated growing, canning, and packing the food within large 3/4 sphere geodesic greenhouses, within which are currently operating planting, cultivating, pruning, and harvesting mechanisms in a tree-like arrangement. He would initiate a total industry. In short, it is assumed by the curriculum and professional initiative, which I propose, that the design scientist will not wait to be retained before tackling problems and will not be concerned exclusively with carrying out the local detailing of a part of a component product within the general industry venture system, which has already been primarily designed by the industrial client. Well, a lot of this may actually be forced on us. If we look at, as we mentioned earlier, look at what's happening to the Ukraine, that has an impact potentially on 40 million people who won't get the food they would have had otherwise. And the Sudan, just climate now is making it almost impossible for them to produce the food they need. So yes, perhaps we need to move more of our food production into controlled environments.
I want to comment too that I'm going to steal the show here while I do, but Bucky talked about and designed a mill. This is in a critical path, I think. And he designed this mill in South Carolina, this mill in South Carolina, the cotton mill. So they put the cotton in, and instead of using conveyor belts moving it across, they use gravity to bring it down through. This design was really immaculate, but all of the milling had been moved out of the US and nobody was concerned about doing it. And the project just died. This was back in 1951. And just this last week, I heard about some guy who was frustrated because he couldn't get his milling done, and he's trying to move milling back into the US, which is really interesting. So, you know.
Maybe you can connect them.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be necessarily a have to type of moment if that's the way some parts of our agriculture move. It might be a very great design efficiency. One of the things that I have in my brain from watching other videos is if you were to take a transparent, semi-transparent geodesic dome and put it over the other geodesic dome, the difference in temperature could power a turbine on the top, and you would have energy that could run your watering systems inside. If you have that area of space controlled, you would lose less water. So it would improve the efficiency of what's going on in an agricultural system in a lot of ways. I was just listening to a podcast as I was moving through my day that was looking at mushrooms. And one prediction was in 10 or 15 years, we could be getting up to 15% of our food production from fungi. Much less resource intent, doesn't rely on the bees, uses less water. We could figure out how to work with them. They've got it. Fungi themselves are just this amazing reservoir of bioactive chemicals that could be amazing for us. Anyways, I don't think of having geodesic domes as a have to. I think it might be a great opportunity. I could get excited about it.
And just to include here, mycelium, these fungi, they're more related to human beings than they are to plants. If you look back at the evolutionary tree, human beings and mycelium broke off, and they're more together. We're more cousins with fungi than we are with cows and other mammals. Very interesting. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Julian has let's continue reading.
Yeah.
Design science school students would be encouraged to organise themselves to study whole industries and the relationship of total industry to general society needs. For example, what component disciplines such as chemistry, economics, etc., they must master will become self-evident and we made available to them within the universities of the students' own scheduling. For instance, one of the design science schools might undertake to have all of its students spend all of their college years studying every aspect of the air transport industry. This study could start with the new ecology of wood and spaceman. Wood doesn't sound right. World, perhaps. See my addresses at Vision 65. The students might undertake to redesign the whole industry of transportation service in such a way as to employ credit cards, computerised ticketing, automated follow-through of the whole transportation process with all its economic and technical ramifications, whereby a traveller can go to a vending machine in the nearest downtown office or possibly to any hotel lobby or corner store, possibly over his two-way TV, facsimile, cable or radio beam closed circuit system, operating from any spot from which he may wish to initiate his travel. He will insert his credit card into the transmitter and press buttons showing the time that he would like to leave from one point and arrive at such another geographical point anywhere around the world in the shortest possible time and in the most economical way, including terminal helicopter flights, automobile rentals, a ticket printed with his routing and booked passage with the amount automatically charged to his credit card for officially automated accounting within his whole continually processed annual income and outgo, along with the economic accounting of his whole social security, Medicare, education, travel, and new wealth generating.
The comments.
Okay.
Boy, we're almost there, aren't we?
Should we?
Okay. Whenever necessary, the traveller can cancel his ticket by putting his credit card back in any travel vending machine and pushing the cancellation button for the same routing plus the transaction number which has been imprinted on the vending ticket when he received the machine's commitment to carry him. Yeah. So using technology to cut out a lot of unnecessary jobs and to streamline and ephemeralize the whole process. It's interesting because I can remember, hopefully most of you can't, when we couldn't get on an aeroplane without our ticket. And our travel agent, we used a travel agent in those days, used to have the ticket couriered to us. Yeah. So we had the physical ticket in our hand before we headed to the airport, because without it, we couldn't get on the plane.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Elon Musk, his first computer million was made by creating a Yellow Pages mapping device where somebody could get on a computer and get directions from here to there. And that was his first $1 million.
Hmm.
What years should did Bucky wrote this down?
About 60, 70 years ago. Kelly?
Yeah, I think it's like the book itself is, I'm not sure, but it's fairly old.
Be 60s probably during the
It's
1960s.
during 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 50 to 60 years ago. He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Was that easy to predict that the credit card
No.
was going
No.
to be such a
No.
constant in all of our things?
Well,
He
credit
predicted-
cards would have only just, would have been very rare when he wrote this.
Yeah.
Google says he wrote it in 69.
Ah, there we go.
69. You almost got it.
53 years ago. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly and I have been around long enough to remember, haven't we, Kelly?
Yeah, just a little bit.
All right. Should we keep or any more comments? I have one small comment. Like I keep surprising myself when I see this composition of words with the dashes. Like
Mhm.
in Spanish is not very common, and seeing this use that it has, like, it strikes me like, God, yeah, we can make new words just using a dash.
German
Because
is rampant with that. German doesn't even use the dashes. It's been customary for hundreds of years just to stick words together. So Germans
Oh, really?
Germans will have a 30-character word just by putting different nouns together and conceptualize. That's the reason why Einstein and Goddard and a lot of these scientist guys came out of German. Out of Germany. And that's Martin Luther he translated the Hebrew Bible into German. That's the Old Testament, or the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses. That was the most profoundly accurate translation of the Pentateuch, was done by Martin Luther in German. So this idea of putting words together and conceptualizing things, I think Bucky created a whole new level of it, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes he doesn't even put the dashes in there. I think this book was edited. My guess is that Bucky said design science school in one word, and then the editor put dashes so that we would understand what he was talking about.
Possibly, I believe editors do that kind of stuff. And I see that the word design is something that keeps showing, like by design. All right. So
Let me see. Where are we going to start reading? Julian, I can take over, I think.
yeah, I have only 5 minutes. So if you have your
I
ones
have
ready.
mine up. I just need to find where you are. What page are we on?
2.
Page 2.
All right.
Page 2, the last paragraph.
Okay, last paragraph of page 2. Here we go. And then I'm gonna, let's see if it'll share. There we go. Okay.
And
we're
I
on
shall
page 2.
read. Where are we?
There it is.
Yes, here it is. Okay, good. Such booking, billing, clear route seeking or route seeking, alternative travel plan ascertaining computer systems will interlink the total information storage of all the airlines and their feeder systems anywhere around the world. The travel vending machine thus will be able to print out commitments in split second or effect their cancellation in another split second. The printed out ticket will be all that is necessary for the individual to take with him as his automatic key of entry at the most convenient downtown embarkation point. But you won't need to print it because it'll be on your phone.
Yeah, he couldn't predict the phone. Jeez. We had Dick Tracy radio watches back when we were kids, but we didn't know about this phone being so ubiquitously everything. Okay, is that my screen I'm sharing? Julian's screen. Okay, there we are,
No,
page 3.
Okay. At his downtown airlines contact point, he will enter his private travelling quarters and be transported therein to the point of major flight embarkation. His private travelling quarter will be within an angular segment of what I call a fuselage cartridge. Each fuselage cartridge will be a circular section, like a banana slice or like a Lifesaver mint candy, as one of many such circular units packed in parallel as a circular section of a cylinder cut perpendicularly to the cylinder's axis. The long tubular assemblies of these cartridge sections will fit together to form a complete cylindrical cartridge fitting neatly into the tubular-shaped fuselage of the air transport. There can be hundreds or more of these circular cartridge sections. Within any angular segment of one of these cartridge sections, the travelling quarters will provide the maximum sitting space without one human physically touching another human being. The integrity of each individual's privacy will be physically ensured by adequate space and omnidirectional design science considerations. The planning will be omnidirectional and not just a planar expansion of the seat row count. The sitting devices will convert to a full-length horizontally reclining bed. The bed can move in space without the cartridge, can move in space within the cartridge section by mechanical means. So there's your solution to spreading COVID on the flight. You won't see or be in contact with the other passengers. You'll be in your own little cylinder.
Yeah.
Mm.
And they already do have the reclining chairs.
Oh, yes, yes.
And Elon Musk is talking about building tunnels where people get in their own little cars and they get hooked together just like this. And it's not in the air, but it's underground. And it's almost exactly what he's saying.
Mm.
That's the Boring Company, Elon Musk Boring Company.
It's interesting to just see this whole thing, that everything that Bucky's saying is that you actually have to just think in terms of whole systems. And that once you really kind of have that ability that you're able to predict some of these things, and you can start to see the interconnections, like you can start to see the particulars that are actually going to, kind of how the airline industry is going to end up. And it allows you to have insights that you wouldn't otherwise have. But again, that goes back to the whole idea of education and seeing things, the connections between things.
Comments, questions?
It is, I think, a little bit optimistic of Bucky that he has seen all the benefits, or he's chiming all the benefits from the point of the traveler. What I'm absolutely certain about is that there's no real privacy in this. There will be bioscanners checking, your temperature,
Of course.
organisms you have, how much money's in your pocket, and they'll already know what's on your account. So there's always two sides to things, and this will give other corporations a chance to sell to you, extract from you,
Right,
because of your participation.
It doesn't have to be that way. I think that capitalism or the free economy does not have to be exploitive like that. But unfortunately, we started out with imperialism, capitalistic imperialism, and the idea of getting somebody to work for the least amount of money. It seems like business is out to do that. I can recall several times I'd say to my person, well, what's the least amount of money? What money do you need to make right now? And then, as we get more successful, I'll pay you more. And I had several people who came in, worked really cheap. And then just to toot my other horn, I had an employee come up to me and say, well, gee, aren't you going to get paid? And I said, no, dude, I'm not getting paid. You did the work, you get paid. I own the business, I'm paying you. But I don't think that most capitalistic endeavors operate that way. And Mitt Romney, senator from Utah, is one of the big guys who goes in and exploits corporations and shifts assets around and starts exploiting assets and getting rid of employees. We're just in a crazy time where conscience is not part of capitalism. You know, compassion doesn't seem.
Just on that point, as an employer, what concerns me, and I want to be fair with those I employ, the more the government imposes and makes me pay more and provide more in benefits, the more I have to find ways of minimising the number of people I employ. In Australia, we have, amongst other things, a payroll tax, which means that the more people you create jobs for, the greater the percentage the government takes from you by way of payroll tax. And so it's a struggle, it's a tension between creating employment and maximising the use of alternatives to employees. So it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Let's continue.
I need to leave now to respect my other compromise that I have tomorrow, but I was really enjoying it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks
Good
for
job.
your
Thank
contribution,
you, Julian. Thank you,
Have a good
Julian.
day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
It's good seeing you.
Thank you.
Okay, John, you want to continue?
Sure. So I think I'll start at the beginning of that paragraph. All of these separate destination routed circular sanctioned compartments. Oh, sorry, were we up to there? Or were we partway through the previous one? Yeah, all the people in any one cartridge section will be going to the same destination. A number of these circular cartridges with their passengers and their luggage will be joined together, making an increasingly long cylinder trough, which runs a continuous walking passageway or corridor made up of the cartridge sections locked continuously together. All of these separate destination routed circular sectioned compartments, within each of which the individual may change his position of sitting to stretch out, and in which whole families can be given private enclosures. Each section having its separate toilet compartment will be routed by helicopter lift from downtown to the dispatching airports. At the airports, the cartridge cross sections will be loaded into the next transport bound for their particular destination or series of destinations. The cartridges being loaded in proper sequence for detachment on jigs at their respective destinations. The combined cartridge sections, recombined at each airport, will be loaded through the open tail of the tubular fuselage, as cargo loadings are made through the open tail of cargo planes. Each of the cartridge sections will have circumferential trackage gears for smooth ball running shunting into and out of the tubular fuselage, or local marshalling racks on its own three annular rolling bracings. The cartridges will slide into...
Sorry.
You've lost me just a second. What happened then?
Steve, you have to scroll down.
It is scrolled down. I'm
Just wait.
I think more.
The cartridges will
Annual.
slide into longitudinal aisle alignments and lock together, or be detached for local routing to
Hang on.
page 4.
There you go. There it is.
Downtown disembarkations. The cartridges with corridors running through them can be sandwiched together with freight and mail cartridge sections, so that both passenger and cargo or freight will be automatically dealt in and out of the various destination fuselages to be replaced by each airport's outbound cartridge group. This marshalling or separating out and recombining of cartridge sections can be accomplished at each airport with computerized switching equipment. The cargo sections can be swiftly left out or in at each marshalling point by gatewayed cartridge holding tracks, which will at each point sort the cartridges anew for most economical flight aggregation, as continually processed evolutingly by the world traffic computers to most effectively integrate the unexpected new peaks and valleys of frequency and magnitude variations. Based on over-accumulating past performance, the computers will calculate probability at all times, correcting as they go to the nearest patterns of evolutionary changes. At destination airport, the passenger cartridge sections will be helicopter lifted or vacuum tube sucked to the nearest downtown disembarkation points. The same world travel and freight traffic computerization will not only take care of all hoteling and dwelling accommodation at way or destination ports, but will clearly provide the guidelines for the future living, facilitate industry's production and distribution requirements. Such an overall living and travelling accommodation service industry may most probably be evolved through design science by a merging together of such present industry management corporations as the International Bell telephone system, hotel systems, etc. Such general concepts can be worked on by a given design science school over a period of time as a continuing research in a given art. The students involved and their faculty will be continually confronted with an awareness of all the disciplines essential to the individual in order to enable his most effective attack upon such comprehensive designing. What will the student have to know to make it possible for him and his colleagues to reduce design science research to effective practice, superior, in order to provoke use by humanity to that already in operation? What will those taking the design initiative need to do to eliminate frustrating contiguous industrial factors and social indifferences? What will the students have to know, not only to make the most effective solutions, but to be able to make effectively known the results of their work to all industrial and government agencies, as well as to the segments of the public concerned with the use of their unique and comprehensive design science innovations?
So we can take a minute and just talk about what we know today about what students would have to know. And I come back to my grandson who's just creating his own education. Now he is in a unique environment. He is in an intelligent family that supports that. But I wonder, is there anything we can contribute to this conversation, or should we continue to read?
I'll just make one comment really quickly, is that this idea of knowing something immediately, there's something lost in that process.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be noted that just because you get the answer right away, it's not necessarily always a good thing, because going through the process of actually learning how to get the answer is actually just as important. So I think that what is lost in that process is how to ask a good question.
Yeah.
And so that when I think about design science, I think that that's one of the most important things, because asking a good question actually allows you to imagine things differently.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a very important point, especially with what Bucky's talking about here.
I had written immediacy down too as a takeaway today.
Me too. So did I.
Yeah, well, that's, you're commenting on it, and I think that's important. And I think there is a difference, Joe. What you're sharing is, and I'm thinking of Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits. There's a difference between immediacy and urgency. And this idea of, okay, now I have something immediately on purpose. It might serve me to slow down and ponder. And you know that book, Slow Thinking and Fast Thinking, right? Kel, I think we've talked about that before in this call. The idea of, okay, now I've got my immediate answer. Now I need to be on purpose about turning it over to the slow part of my brain, where I'm contemplating and having as much depth in the conversation as Bucky's presenting here in these words. You know, immediacy is not urgency.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, immediacy.
Does that mean that there's value in the lag?
Wow.
There can be, yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's where the value in the lag actually exists.
And I'll tell you, if it weren't for this call, I would have told you my whole life, I would have said lag sucks.
Right.
You know, I was into the immediacy thing, but now I see how critical lag is.
Well, and what leads is actually allowed you to act on what lags. Anyway, that's something else I was thinking about. That's different.
And sometimes it's really hard to lag. Sometimes it's really hard to say, oh, we got all this information, let's just do something about it. In fact, I would say that is the environment in America today, in most countries, from what I hear in politics. They get some idea and blam, they're going to act on it right now without even pondering any depth in the conversation whatsoever.
So one of the Abraham Hicks segments that I listened to on YouTube today, so Abraham is a collection of entities channeled. So Universal Intelligence said, maybe the fact that your government is so paralyzed is not such a bad thing. It keeps them from doing some really stupid stuff.
Yes, that's so true.
Jeez. Other comments or questions? John, is your voice starting to waver? Shall we bring somebody else?
No,
in?
I'm right. I'm very happy to do this.
Wonderful.
To undertake comprehensive generalized system theory research manner by which the individual design science schools will each tackle an individual industry while correlating all their efforts one with the other on a world basis. It will then be appropriate for the Professional Design Science Society of the world and its various continental sub-societies as spokesman for the profession to coordinate the world-around design science school curricula and to notify each and all the industries concerned of their undertakings and to make recommendations to the various industries regarding the progressive availability of the individual professional graduates most competent to carry out the finalising phases of the new services to be provided. This taking of the initiative and assumption of prime responsibility, vacated a third of a century ago by the great world pirates and left ignorantly by society to their political professional world of architecture, engineering, and all of the sciences other than the medical sciences. However, this is exactly the initiative and responsibility the medical sciences are already now shouldering with respect to man's internal organisms. I propose that, in due course, design science, as the objective applied discipline, accomplished by combined industrial design, engineering, architecture, and all the sciences, shall be so organised as to provide effective, anticipatory strategies for formulating and managing the evolution of mankind's external metabolic regeneration of the industrial self-organisms in the same anticipatory service manner that the medical profession has anticipatorily dealt with individual man's interior organic processes of metabolic regeneration. Want to stop there or keep going?
Any comments or questions?
Bucky had far too high an assessment of the medical profession. It also is run by a political hierarchy, and there is, I didn't have any clue how much until COVID. What he's talking about here in this section really points to the idea of meritocracy. And when I remember from Critical Path, and he was talking about education, and he predicted the downfall of the universities. As the means of education got democratized, people would be able to take tests in their individual area of concern. And so by merit on individual topics, because there could be 5 different ways to learn the same subject matter, and paying tens of thousands of dollars to a particular college doesn't mean that you learned it, even if they give you a diploma. Doesn't mean that you're the best person for the job. So he envisioned this meritocracy. And it would be great if that's really the way it happened. I see far too much political maneuvering and nepotism and special interest.
Yeah.
Yes, I think he was far too optimistic about us actually working together without vested interest for the benefit of all.
It might be important to remember that this book is entitled Utopia or Oblivion. I think right
That's
now,
right. Yes.
right
yes,
now
yes.
he's beating the Utopia drum.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Shall I continue?
Comments or questions? Go ahead.
Now, sorry, did I just read the paragraph that starts, I propose that in due course design science?
I think you did.
Yeah. I propose that the comprehensive design initiate be officially seized by the professions. If it isn't done on the North American scene, it will be done elsewhere, possibly in Japan, China, or Russia, possibly in newly developing countries such as Africa or Australia. It will be done, and I am confident, in the very near future. The professions now have the opportunity to roll on and recover and make a touchdown with the football fumbled a third of a century ago by the great pirates and ever since ineptly booted around the world by politicians in general, albeit each has booted the ball with his own degree of practical benevolence, according to the behavioural conditioning automatically manifest by the biases of the boosters' respective environmental circumstances. Nobody has done anything wrong. We had to have almost overwhelming experience with failures to learn that we could be successful.
I want to comment about China here.
Yes.
Because I'll tell you, it seems to me in that kind of like super controlled environment, China is just absolutely committed to no personal privacy and everything running like a clock. And if they get too many cases if they get 3 cases of COVID, they shut down 3 million people. The idea is to control. And wow, I think that's good and that's bad. I think China is going to make some major headways. And again, Elon Musk in China, you know, he was accused, evidently China likes to control the businesses, but he wouldn't start Tesla in China without 51%. And I think he was able to
That doesn't guarantee you anything in China.
Yeah, it doesn't, huh?
You can have 80% and the government can still take your 80% from you anytime they choose.
Anytime they choose. So
if he thought 51% was powerful, he was naive.
Well, I think it was a matter of principle for him. But he's got to understand China does what it wants to do. Yeah.
It's called being right in the wrong environment, not being aware of and understanding your environment.
Yeah. Well, I think, China, go ahead, Joe.
No, I mean, it is interesting with China and this idea of control overall. Yeah. I mean, just in the sense of privacy, if you think about their credit scoring system as well, if you're
social credit
scoring system.
Yeah.
That, you know, that's a form of control, actually, just to control the country's, I don't know what the country can even say or think.
Yeah.
It's kind of terrifying.
And if I were a car maker, I'd want to build cars in China, even if there's a chance they could take it all over, because the market's so good, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I knew somebody that was with AT&T International when it mattered. And you almost have to, in order to stay relevant, you have to go into China, he felt. Anyway, but he said you also know that you're in that process, you're going to lose all your technology.
Yeah. Well, Elon Musk public domain most of his technology. He public domained it and said, here, go out and use it. You know, let's solve the world's problems.
Wow.
He's a big believer in the one who does the work gets the pay. And most of musicians today, they don't get paid royalties on their songs. I mean, some of them do. And of course, the major ones, mainstream ones do, but most of the musicians today, they give away their music for free and they make their money by charging $100 a seat at a concert. So if they're willing to go out and perform, if they do the work, they get the pay. Interesting. Other comments or questions?
I was listening to, I can't even remember which podcast, but there was a point made that Stalin had shown what happened in Russia, USSR, with the collectivization of farming. And and the millions and millions of people who died as a result of the famine. And Mao Zedong had that example very, very clearly in front of him as he went off to push the communism into China and his quote green revolution. And I believe his body count exceeds Stalin's.
It does.
Possibly not Tony Fauci's, but just like, so there's, as countries, we talk about, what will one country do? Bucky's saying if North America doesn't grab these people up, well, they'll go to these other countries. And it doesn't seem like we're very good at learning the lessons that history provides.
No.
At all.
Susan, can I just ask a question? Did I hear you say quietly in the middle of what you were saying, possibly not Fauci's?
I'm sorry. Yes, I did. That's
okay. Just want to make sure I'd heard correctly.
That's my characterization of it. But by the time you look at HIV and we get the play out from what's just happened with the things that we've injected into people and the lockdown that they mandated for all the wrong reasons, in my opinion, and the human suffering and economic suffering that it's caused, I think that his body count's still rolling.
I heard possibly 40 million in India.
Yeah. So that would put him over Mao. And it might be other people, and again, I don't mean to make this a political discussion. Other people may not agree with my characterization, but he has held that office captive for more than 50 years, longer than J. Edgar Hoover. And what he's done in his reach, if you look back with the HIV, his decisions, his actions have had global impact that have, I can just say impact because that way nobody can argue it's just impact. I can't even get myself to finish reading the Robert Kennedy book. But it comes, each chapter has a very dense bibliography. This is not somebody just throwing mud.
I'll tell you.
Shall I continue?
Well, and I don't want to get political, and I'm not particularly anti-vax. It's just that I don't get vaccinations. I've never had a flu shot ever. And I did have my polio shot when I was a kid. Nobody has ever studied the effects of multiple vaccinations. There's no way to get a control group. Where is there?
But are you misusing the language for a start? Is it a vaccination if it's not a vaccine?
Correct. It's an experimental genetic platform, this new one.
Yeah, this mRNA thing, besides everything else. Wow, we live in a very complex age.
But words lead. So this was very important. These people that used propaganda in this last global epoch that we're talking about, they hijacked the words first.
Yes.
And what's interesting, Steve, I don't know if you'll ever go this route. There's a book called The Moth and the Iron Lung that really looks at polio. So when I say the word polio, I think of a Vibrio cholera microorganism. Well, it turns out that's not really true. And it's just a long, but once we all agreed on a definition of what was in polio, and we started to use that as a symbol, and it had all this other meaning, it allowed for the start of mass vaccinations. And I believe that that's because of unintended consequences of well-meaning people has opened up a huge biologic kettle of fish.
You bet. I knew people back in the 70s who were absolutely convinced that at the time that the Salk vaccine was created and put out there, that the virus was already evolved out. It was on its downward curve anyway. And the vaccine took the credit for eliminating it. That was back in the 70s. I knew these guys were disciples of Timothy Leary. I mean, they were on the edge of, the new consciousness, but they were totally convinced of that, and that the whole polio vaccine thing was a giant hype, a corporate hype. Does that make any sense?
It does. And we also know that there were direct deaths that were attributed to those injections. And then what was swept under the rug were the simian virus contaminants that were in what was being injected until I think, I don't remember the exact year, but I'm not sure I got it versus you. So if you got a polio vaccine, you probably also got simian/monkey virus retroviruses, because we didn't even know what retroviruses were, and yet we injected our global population.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, sorry, back onto Malthus, because that's also another amazing idea.
Okay, shall I continue?
Yeah. Everybody ready?
But from now on, I think we must all assume that Malthus was wrong, and thus it is normal for man to be a physical and economic success, that it is abnormal.
Whoops, sorry. There we go. It's abnormal 4.
Any to be a failure, that man's preoccupation must be with his exquisite, anti-entropic functioning in universe at large and at small, that by producing machines and tools that will produce more with less than was ever produced before, man must continually demonstrate the mastery of the physical by the metaphysical faculties with which he is endowed.
I think that's the part we're forgetting as human beings, isn't it? I was married to a lady for 10 years who every new thing that got invented, she bought it. And if it had anything to do with personal accountability and self-discipline, she would rather take the pill, buy the machine. I mean, the idea of being metaphysically present to my reality is a unique concept, I think.
I think what you're hinting at, Steve, is it takes people who are willing to get up on their tiptoes and apprehend into what's coming.
Yeah.
And Bucky said that he talked about the idea of individuals being spontaneously arousable, and that only one in 10 million could even begin to contemplate the idea of procession. So I put those two statements kind of together, and look at that it just is going to take if there's some critical mass of human beings that can approach this stuff, we can hit a tipping point and we can move from our current path that looks like it's on target for Oblivion into Utopia. And it's probably the only thing that can. I think it was Margaret Mead's quote that, a concerned group of individuals is the only thing that ever really changes anything. And I think that's, Bucky's talking right there in that last sentence about our anti-entropic effects. And that's what we're tasked with. And what Manu would say, because I'm just channeling for him, locally anti-entropic.
Yeah. We have it. We're an hour and a half into this, and there's a new section called Design Strategy. And we can start a new section or we can terminate the call tonight. And we've covered plenty of stuff. And so maybe it's a good time to summarize and go from there. Joe, how are you feeling? And what are your takeaways tonight? And we have some time. So go ahead and look at your notes and let's go through this. This debriefing might actually generate some new ideas amongst us. So go ahead.
I have that was quite a bit that we covered this evening. So, that was, a few pages of this. But the thing that kept coming back to me, and as I stated a little bit earlier, is this idea of understanding the whole. Then how do you then understand the whole? And it seems to me is that the way our education is structured and the way I'm just going through this, that we're more headed towards, I don't want to be pessimistic, but towards Oblivion than we are Utopia. I think we've become increasingly specialized. And I think we're still headed in that direction. And I think that that's something that ability to put together the whole entire process of the ticketing process, or even how credit cards are going to work, or able to see connections between industries, is it requires a generalist approach to the world. And I don't think that actually I think we're still in a very siloed approach to learning. I also, the immediacy factor, as we talked about a little bit earlier, that was an insight to me, because I always find that there's something lost in in the journey of finding the answer to a question. So that if you're able to get the answer immediately, then I think that what is the answer that you're being fed? And then you don't necessarily question what's behind that answer. And I think that that's highly problematic in understanding whole systems. So you can get more information, but what's the information that's being fed to you? And actually, that's what Julian had talked about: the more information that we're being fed, and then what is true within that framework. Some of the things that we were talking about, even regarding the medical profession, were pretty interesting to me as well. I mean, I remember, watching Dr. Mendelsohn. So, and who's talked about the idea of the polio vaccine, and that basically the polio could be headed out, without the vaccine. So I don't, that's always been an interesting topic to me. But getting back to Bucky, I mean, I'm just, I feel pretty, I feel fortunate to be in the group, as always. That's what I do want to say. But I am pretty much amazed at how he's able to just make connections and really kind of put everything into coherent narrative, and be able to, pretty much comprehend and predict what, the future of systems. We also have to consider the fact that Bucky was doing this without the idea of the internet either. So, I mean, think about that. Take the internet out of the equation, and how he was able to see the interconnectedness of systems within that framework. So that's a very challenging thing to do. Anyway, those are some of my takeaways. There was a very, very interesting discussion, as always. And I'm going to go to John Butler now and ask you, how do you feel and what are you taking away? And thank you for reading, because that was quite a bit to cover this evening.
Well, it was a little bit brain stretching at times because of the way Bucky expressed himself, but that's fair enough. Really glad to be here this week. Glad to have moved on to this new area. Troubled by the awareness that there are so many vested interests and so much misinformation, and it's so divisive. And at a time when the world never needed us more to use our ability to do the things that Bucky said we could do and ought to do for the benefit of the world, that it's increasingly difficult to do so because of people's fears and beliefs, many of which aren't true, and the misinformation and the vested interests, whether it's the media, our politicians, business, who can you trust, and what obstacles would you encounter that are completely unnecessary and man-made? Just disturbing, that's all. Disturbing, because if the world ever needed us to work together and use our intelligence, it's now, that's for sure. So, yeah, I suppose I think of Bucky 60, 70 years ago, looking to the future and hoping that we will find Utopia rather than Oblivion, but he was aware of the alternative, which a lot of the time is the more likely end result. So should we all be booking our tickets on Elon Musk's rocket ships to be the fortunate few who exit the world? No, I don't think so, Susan. Yeah, so a bit darker than normal. I'm normally more upbeat for this. I'm feeling a bit darker today. So, but still glad to have been here and part of it all. So who's been Raffers? You haven't, have you? So
No.
what do you take out of today?
Thank you, Johnny. No, actually, it's been a very interesting call. And my main takeaway is how Bucky viewed education and how to build a curriculum around solving specific problems. And he wasn't just talking about, a bunch of people doing something, but people cooperating and collaborating to actually solve problems and do more with less, using technology and every means available. And in today's world, we're not doing any of that. It's quite the opposite. I mean, even the whole concept of intellectual property, I mean, it's to me just ridiculous. But we know, I mean, nobody knows anything because of me or because of my special talent. Everything we know and we create is because somebody thought about those things before, or well, all we do is put things together and organize things in a different way. So all this concept of this belongs to me and is for me to use exclusively for a certain amount of time. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, it's much more interesting to think as a species, this is what I know. I'm willing to give it to the world to use and exploit, and just give me credit for it. But that's all. And even that is not really that important as long as we make it or we don't. And no, I guess it's staggering to know that everything with the way education is run today is, again, it's the very same way probably my parents were even taught. And when you think what's happened and what Bucky was thinking about, 50, 60 years ago, and we're still doing the same crazy stuff. And then we wonder why we're in so much trouble. Why are we still killing each other? Or I know, thinking about profit and growth, and I mean all these obsolete ideas about what the world should look like or how the world should operate. And so I agree with Joseph. What we're doing today is more pushing ourselves into oblivion. It's very true. But that's not to say that if a bunch of people can think otherwise, and as Susan once said, I mean, making 1% of the population think the way we think or the way Bucky thinks, I mean, that alone would be enough. We don't need to persuade everybody. Well, we need to, I don't know, I guess, get things into motion and do what each of us can as individuals to make sure that we steer the spaceship Earth in a different direction rather than what is going currently. So once again, it's a great discussion, and I become optimistic by the fact that we can get together and again, people from Australia, the US, when Manu is here, South Africa, Australia, we can come together and think, actually, there's something fishy going on, and we need to do things in a completely different way, in a completely different light. And again, it's not up to politicians. It's up to, again, the individuals. So I'm glad to be part of this bunch of individuals trying to make a difference. So happy about that. So that's my takeaway today. So Julian is gone. So Susan, how are you? How do you feel and what's your takeaway?
I feel like I've been a little bit dominatingly bombastic during this conversation. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up all the space. It touched on a lot of things that I've spent past several years working to understand better. I kind of am hopeful, Raphael, that what's going on right now is the type 2 evolution that's going to lead to that type 1 evolution just enough. And as we approach the boundary where it's going to become something else, I think there's the more chaos, it just tells us that next evolution is getting closer. And so my prediction was that it's the square root of 1%.
Yeah.
that's going to be critical mass to move us. But it's interesting what you're saying about the whole idea of intellectual property and trying to figure out a way that people actually get some sort of compensation for doing that very tough thinking. What I did love was the example that Bucky had in his life, which was that you couldn't convince other people that your way was better. You couldn't convince them to stop doing what they're doing. You just had to design something and put it into motion that was an irresistible alternative.
Mhm.
Something that just makes so much sense, is so much easier. And because there is a gradient of resistance. But the thing that will overcome it is people with optimism, is people who are willing to think past the obstacles that are right in front of them. Steve, how do you feel and what is your takeaway tonight?
Boy, I'll tell you, I'm bubbling. I'm really amazed with Raffers and with his positivity. Like, you know, it's easy to look at all the potential and to see how things just, you know, they aren't as good as they could be. And of course, we're going to go into those conversations as this book proceeds. This immediacy thing, and Joe brought up immediacy and lag, and I think that you know, somehow that's at least philosophical foundation for hope, is that there's a little bit more lag going on. You know, as I look at these new generations of people, I mean, they're just on TikTok doing stupid, dumbass things, and they're creating their whole lives. I mean, people are creating images, their avatars on social media are more important than their own lives.
Right.
And somehow they're living those. And actually they get paid for it. There are people getting paid for their avatars and actually making a living. This world is really, really weird. And it's amazing. We're going to make it through this. But, you know, 35 years from now, and I have a goal to be around at 105. I have a 35-year game plan right now. Wow, we're going to be living in a totally weird time. I heard tonight an interview with a trans guy. They're two guys that were both born biological women, and they both transitioned over into males. They were taking hormones, and then one of them decided that he wanted to have a baby. So he stopped his testosterone treatments. Did you hear this one, Susan?
NPR? I caught the tail end of it.
Yeah, NPR reveal, or a moth. And the guy says he stopped his testosterone, and he decided to have a baby. And so here two gay men had a baby, and here he is holding. I mean, I can create any reality I want to create. I guess all I have to do is get enough of a job to buy gas and put it in my car, which may be impossible in the next couple of weeks. Who knows? Wow, do we live in a crazy time? And I do believe in the ultimate resilience and power of the individual to live through this. It's hard to be an optimist like Raffers, but underneath it, after I want to vomit, then I say, well, we got to pull it through. So this is really exciting. I love this group. I love our willingness to just to ponder and to share possibilities. And so I'm really grateful for here. And I think this idea of being a generalist, being a comprehensivist, I know that Joe spends a lot of time on he has comprehensivist Wednesdays, and they're into this conversation about coming out of all these little specifics, because as long as Wall Street can make $1 off of specialization, regardless of the outcome, we're in deep doo-doo, right? And somehow, fortunately, there's a thing called a B corporation, which is not just based on corporate profits, where the shareholders agree in advance that the cultural significance of their business is equally important with profits. And I put in a PDF file here of this guy who's big on regenerative capitalism. He started a fund, and he's actually thinking very comprehensively. So there is hope. And one of my hopes is this call. So I'm glad to be here. I'm complete for tonight. And if that's good, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Thank you.
I hope Manu's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to Kelly, you know?
No, I was about to say Manu and Kelly. I was both.
Manu didn't show at all. Kelly evidently was distracted. So let's pray for them all. And
Bennett was just distracted and he feels okay.
Yeah.
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 Okay, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.